That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Volume 15. Part 2. Chapter 4. 8 Gates. Diablo was the only one left after Laplace left, and everything went according to plan to his delight, and his laughter grew deeper. While keeping watch over the beloved master at close range, he is also considering how he can use it as a reference for his future use. What the master still lacked, how he was going to make up for it, the perfect opportunity to see that, Diablo couldn't help but secretly snigger. Nope, how could Lord Rimuru be lacking? The most important thing right now is to sort out what action I'm going to take next, that's the right one. No matter how his mind wandered, Diablo would only think about how to come in handy for Rimuru. And the reason he hadn't entered the war was because of some other intention. If I had gone to war, there should have been no chance of a bitter fight except for Lord Veilgrind, but that would have been a waste. The rare opportunity to fight against the strong should be used effectively. In Diablo's opinion, Benimaru still had signs of growth. Even though evolution had given them a significant increase in their fighting power, if they want to be extremely powerful, fighting their enemies is the shortest way to do so. This wasn't just for Benimaru. In fact, it was a common topic that all the subordinates who had been granted power by Rimuru now had to face. And in this battlefield, just the right opponent is preparing for battle, there is no reason not to take advantage of it. Diablo was thinking like this. Lord Benimaru must have read my mind, and since he's not complaining, that means he probably feels the same way I do. Although it was hard to see on the surface, Benimaru was quite belligerent, just not to the extent of Diablo, but had a tendency to enjoy fighting the strong. I'm really looking forward to his growth. Diablo thought so. If one could survive this battle, one would surely gain greater strength. Having said that, Lord Rimuru's orders were absolute and no one would be allowed to die, meaning they had only one path to victory. He who does not die, all survive and then shed their bones to a higher power. To this end, Diablo also did well to leave no stone unturned in his consciousness. The mere power that is given means nothing, and it is only by gaining the ability by one's own efforts and living it to the fullest that one can truly grow and grow. This is the stage on which the transformation will take place. Give them the enemy and crush them. The growth that follows is what Rimuru wanted, that's what Diablo thought. Kufufufu. Testarossa, for the time being, even Carrera and Ultima could imagine a rough fight based on strength alone, especially since Carrera was very problematic, and it would be a good experience to experience a hard fight here. Make sure you survive, or I'll really kill you if you don't. Kufufufufu. Afterwards, the excitement of Diablo reached its peak after witnessing the battle between Rimuru and Veilgrind. On the outer deck of the Emperor's flagship, the Knights of the Near Guard were assembled. The presence of Imperial Guardians like Veilgrind ignited their fighting spirit. If it were Lord Veilgrind, it would undoubtedly bring victory. We can't lose either. Win here, and then calm the Western countries in one breath. Exactly. Our empire is just around the corner. Long live the Emperor. Glory to the Emperor. Never call it a wide deck where respective thoughts collide with each other. Then, neatly aligned, the enemy was identified. Are you coming, minions of the Demon Lord? From the moment the evil dragon Veldora was taken away, it was doomed to your defeat. Some let out a sneer like that, but most of the knights were silent and unsheathed. The reason is simple and straightforward. They see the enemy coming here as a threat. And they are aware of the fact that this is the battlefield and will act to meet the enemy. Only, they don't know it yet. Desperation had come straight to the side. When they realize this, it is the time of their death. Testarossa flew gracefully through the air, a face of boredom. The target flew aboard the ship and could see the fools who had raised their swords. This man is unhappy. I've seen how we're still trying to challenge you. Benimaru was just silent. While wanting to recognize it, it is only natural that one would do so from the standpoint of the enemy. That's why Benimaru didn't respond to Testarossa, just followed through with the silence. This is also because, in this respect, Benimaru can still count as normal. In the eyes of someone who really leaps outside of common sense, Benimaru's thinking circuit is the anomaly. And as if to prove it here, Testarossa moved. It is foolish to despise the strong, for they are exceedingly sorrowful. Let me bless them with mercy before they are consumed with fear. If it were normal, Testarossa would only make a little noise to show some strength and then go and devour the feelings that had fallen into fear. It is just that it takes time to bring fear into the hearts of the enlightened enemy. Not only is this troublesome, it is also contrary to the purpose of this campaign. So she chose to do it as quickly as possible and clean up the mess that was getting in the way. Without hesitation, Testarossa unleashed the magic that enveloped the entire airship in effect. The magic is called nuclear strike magic, the blessing of death. The ultimate forbidden magic that destroys the soul and spreads its tyranny without mercy. The result, in turn, is the dark sphere that envelops the airship and the death that descends within it. Bathed in the light of the demonic death that brought death to all life, the people inside the ship were nearly dead. After ending his contact with Gladim, General Samuel, who had been running around in pre-war preparations, did the same, breaking his breath without even understanding what had happened. He wasn't so lucky. If Rimuru had any grace left and recalled Calgurio's plea, perhaps he would have given the order not to spread it to Samuel. Unfortunately, however, reality is harsh and all beings are equal in the face of death. What a surprise! We've ordered her to make the first move, but then we won't have a chance. I'm trying a little too hard not to ask you to do it. Nonsense. You're thinking in order not to have your prey taken away, right? To Benimaru's spitefulness, Testarossa returned a delightful smile. I can't believe I've been caught off guard. As expected of you, Benimaru-sama. It's been a long time since I've had a compliment that didn't make me happy. There's nothing wrong with this kind of banter. For Benimaru, that was a lot of work. There were comments about the two people who were late. Ah. You want to stay, even for our share. It's a mistake. Diablo should have left it alone. It's the right thing to do. Ultima and Carrera contained resentment staring at Testarossa. Testarossa just returned a bitter smile. You're not even close. Look for Aura and see if anyone's still alive. Exactly. A weakling who can be defeated by that level of attack is not worthy of being my opponent at all. Well done, and a commendation for this screening. I'm flattered, Your Eminence. Testarossa showed a smile with just the right expression. Those who can know will know that the expression is so eloquent. Those who can bear the blessing of death can only be those who retain the suitability of magic, or spiritual beings. With any luck, an immortal might survive. No matter what, since there were still survivors inside the ship, it must be the strong one. Ultima and Carrera, though they felt disheartened, had no way to complain. Having understood this, decided to back off honestly. Thus, let's go. With a command from Benimaru, the raid began. A line of men descending from the outer deck of the airship witnessed the corpse-ridden knights of the Imperial Near Guard, whose bodies remained as evidence that they had fought to the death. That is, it is the end of the road for those who can also be called heroes in the great nations. No, don't, I don't want to die yet. There were also those who reached for the void in a desperate attempt to bite the vitality. However, that life was no longer the same as a candle in the wind, and neither the restorative potion nor the restorative magic had been able to save them from death. From the moment of hostility with Testarossa, these men's lives were numbered. Really. I still think it's a waste. A man of such quality must sing a beautiful hymn. Don't say anything like that. Look, someone is coming to greet us. Forward of Testarossa's fingertips, the bow section of the flagship. There are the people at the top of the empire. Emperor Rudra, and Veilgrind, who was still asleep. Kondo stands on either side of Damrada. Behind Rudra, there are 4 other men and women. There was another man with an honest face waiting by Kondo's side. It's an honor to be greeted by the Emperor. Benimaru fearlessly let the word out, and before Rudra could speak, Kondo and Damrata were about to step forward, but was stopped by Rudra with one hand. No harm done. It took more than 2,000 years to save up the pieces, but that's all that's left now. I'll allow you to answer as the agent of the Demon Lord, Raimoru. That's very kind of you. And then, what is the purpose of coming here? Nothing, it's simple. I'm not the sole agent, but I'll make the request on behalf of Raimoru-sama. From this moment on, cease all acts of combat and surrender unconditionally. We'll stop the pursuit if we swallow the terms honestly. So what if I say no? I have received the order to destroy you from Lord Raimoru. Until one side is all gone, let's fight. That being said, only because we aren't allowed to die, Benimaru added inwardly. The other side of this heart naturally has no way of knowing, leaving only Benimaru's arrogant attitude. The imperial side cannot help but get angry because of this. Insolent man. What couldn't help but come out of his mouth was a loud yell from Malcolm. A maggot who doesn't know how much he's worth is so arrogant and stupid. One of the 4 knights armed with a lance whispered in contempt at Benimaru. Benimaru ignored it and stabbed straight at Rudra. Others remained silent. The decision was in Rudra's hands, and since Rudra had allowed for a counter-answer, it was only disrespectful to interject themselves, or so they thought. It's ridiculous. How can my wish stop here? Well, then, go to hell. The current Benimaru is finally able to be thoughtful and not expose his shallow side. But his nature is still always like a raging ogre. It is more natural to exercise one's strength than to bargain with one's patience. And Raimoru had already ordered a drive to kill, and he had no reason to back down. One touch. There's no better word to describe the atmosphere, and someone moved. Veelgrind, who was still in a deep sleep before, suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up. Rudra. What's wrong? What's going on here? With a mere glance around, Veelgrind made sense of the situation. Even so, thinking their affairs were more important, they ignored the Benimaru and began to narrate. My other body has been locked up by the Demon Lord, Raimoru. It will take a few minutes to break the barrier, so I've decided to send the power back here first. This is the very moment that Raimoru sealed Veelgrind with the heat break prison. Veelgrind had made this move only because she thought she had room to spare, but the fact that Benimaru and the Demoness trio were all present still gave her a sense of crisis. That's Lord Raimoru. We can't lose either. A joyful Shion perked up. He seems to be concentrating on Lord Veldora right now, and there is no doubt that Lord Raimoru will take Lord Veldora back. Sue nodded. But he had also left a clone behind and made sure that Raimoru was safe. This is just how the man, Sue, acts. He's great to be fighting with Lord Veelgrind and Lord Veldora at the same time and still have the upper hand. He really is. To be honest, I didn't expect him to be this strong. That is to say, my lord is unpredictable. The 3 men, who were familiar with the power of Veelgrind, also spoke with more weight. To be honest, they still find it a little hard to believe. If you fail, you shouldn't have been fooled by Diablo's gimmicks. Yeah. That guy knew what was coming and stayed alone to watch the fight. Despicable. To a demon, meanness can also be a word of praise. Listening to these conversations, Shion on the sidelines secretly made a decision to give Diablo some credit afterwards. Sue, who was also watching the battle, was calm. Benimaru, on the other hand, is quietly moving out of sight. He's taking advantage of Moss' insightful observation of the fight. On the other hand, the imperial power was in great disarray. No way. So strong. Emperor Rudra, who had always been calm and collected, and whose emotions were out of place, could not help but stand up and scream in shock. He had also listened to Kondo's advice before and had given a high opinion of Raimoru, but in the end he still thought Raimoru was less threatening than Veldora and no doubt still despised his opponent. I didn't notice it until now, but it's just an afterthought. Kondo also realizes his own misstep. It is not enough to be on guard when one finds one's attacks ineffective. No matter what happens, I will protect His Majesty's noble body. He was speechlessly made aware. From the very beginning, Damrada saw Demon Lord Rimuru as a threat. This is not out of reason. The existence of a cunning figure like Yuki, who has failed to make use of his poor tactics. This alone is enough to be considered an unplaced danger. On top of that, he sensed a certain alienation in Demon Lord Rimuru. Yuki is the same, and so is Demon Lord Rimuru. People with a certain kind of leadership that even Damrada would be fascinated by can make one feel some kind of incredible possibility. Damrada and Emperor Rudra had made a pact in the past, and it was not clear whether Damrada himself would be able to keep his promise. So Damrada had to entrust his fate to others. And the one worthy of being entrusted with it, the one that made him think like that, was the shining duo of Yuki and Rimuru. It is the Demon Lord, Rimuru, who is now irrational in his rage. This fact deeply disturbed Damrada. It felt like something was going on. As Rudra had said, the Empire's highest battle force had been assembled in the bridge. Here, without the stature of Gladim and his men, the situation was such that there were no more reinforcements to be expected. Even so, it still didn't overwhelm Demon Lord Rimuru's minions. The Demon Lord Rimuru was never meant to be an opponent to be taken lightly, and looking at the current situation, it was obvious. Damrada did not dare to be careless in the slightest, straining every nerve in order to guard the Emperor in any state of affairs. Both Malcolm and the Four Horsemen had become unable to keep their usual minds because of this state of affairs beyond what was expected. The power of an absolute such as Veilgrind, even a strong person like them could not peek into the fullness of their power. Such a powerful Veilgrind, yet she recognized the strength of the Demon Lord Rimuru. Such a situation would only be difficult to make them unmoved. At the moment, the two sides were in a state of consternation in two completely opposite senses, and Veilgrind broke that atmosphere. A showdown? I'd like to take you all down and use it as a bargaining chip to bring Demon Lord Rimuru to his knees, wouldn't you? Yeah. Let's prove our strength to me right here. Yes, sir. Rudra's decision washed away the Imperial Knight's trembling, his voice resounding and directing the warrior's state of mind towards tranquility. Well, I promise you victory. Veilgrind gave a magnificent smile. Behind that beautiful, yet chilling smile, you can see a little bit of the gore of the battle that will unfold next.
You guys, you're okay with that, right?
We have won this battle, and we will end the scourge in the future. Good. Then, hopefully, there will be an enjoyable fight. With those words, Veilgrind opened her hands to the sky. What followed was the 8-door solid formation. 8 gates appeared in the air, lined up in the middle of each side. Before narrowing it down to a door through which only one person could pass, Veilgrind began the instructions. This flagship has been isolated by the otherworld I have created. If you want to leave, you have to destroy the door completely. The Imperial forces on the field, minus Rudra, had a total of 8 people. That is, it will evolve into the form of one man guarding one door. What if the whole crew only went through one door? You're a bit of a funny guy, you can try, but only the one who kills the guardian once in the gate is eligible to step into the next gate. If what was said was true, only one person would be eligible for the challenge after all of them had swarmed into one door, and the choice was too risky to leave without breaking all the doors now, no different from gambling. I see. We'll have to wait for the last one, too. Eloquently put. To challenge the door that I guard, it is only right to do so. At Benimaru's accusation, Veilgrind cast a smile. It was because she was confident that she would not be defeated even then, that she had prompted the conditions in the first place. It is only because of the conditions that have been set that this otherworld can be sustained with low consumption. As a result, you will not be able to disengage without breaking down all the doors, and you will not be able to strike at Rudra. Or would you prefer to start a direct melee here? It doesn't matter which way it goes, Veilgrind proclaimed so. The 8-gate solid formation was not good for the defenders. As long as they knew the information of the guardians inside the gate, they could formulate countermeasures to challenge it. If the two sides go straight into full force to start the melee, it could ripple into Rudra, and wanting to avoid that is what Veelgrind really means. More importantly, Veelgrind wanted to imprison Raimuru's men in the otherworld, so even if she had to swallow some disadvantages, she still set the battlefield in the otherworld. All right. I'll take it. Benimaru answered without confusion. As long as I don't get knocked down, this otherworld will not be destroyed. In other words, our victory is unassailable. Veelgrind had the confidence to win even against the full strength of the opponent, which is why she opted for the most secure strategy of the 8 men standoff. Benimaru also took note of Veelgrind's intentions. However, even if one chooses to refuse here, it's still inevitable that one will have to fight Veelgrind, and all things considered, one decides to go with the one with the better chance of winning. Once a consensus was reached, the showdown was set. Before Benimaru's eyes, one by one, they disappeared into the door. Next the last remaining Veelgrind and Rudra also walked through the door after hugging each other. At this point, the door slowly began to move, enveloping and circling Benimaru around them. There's no way of knowing who's in there, there's no such thing as a dumbass who'd miss it. It's despicable, so it's unclear who's guarding the door. Someone else spoke up like that, and it was Shion.
It's okay, I remember.
You idiot, you didn't even look at it properly, right? Benimaru swallowed the sentence back, feeling that he was slightly able to understand Diablo's hardship. Humph, what a delightful afterthought. If you can win, then the honor of fighting me will be given to you. Rudra, who was protected due to the laws of the otherworld, said this leisurely in his chair. Rudra had no doubt that Veelgrind would win, and it was entirely clear from his attitude that he was simply using this fight as entertainment. It's hard to say. If we start a war, who will be able to figure out what will become of it? We must teach you well, there are some things we cannot back down from. Benimaru blurted out the lofty words. Next, a sweep of the faces of his companions. This is to consider clearly who should act as an opponent for whom. However, some can't wait for Benimaru's judgment. This person is Shion. I've endured and endured. That's enough. Wait a minute, hello? Lord Raimuru said to kill all the enemies, don't worry, just clean them up. Do you really have a problem with this guy? Even if I can't hold you back, I can't allow her to act without permission. Although Benimaru thought so, before he had a chance to stop Shion, she burrowed through the door as if she was about to kick it down. Let it go and leave it at that. I don't know if it was intentional or coincidental, but it's like she chose the right opponent. The actions of the Shion are easily linked to the best results. Even though there were problems this time, the door that matched Benimaru's idea was chosen. That leaves 7 doors left. One of these is Veelgrind, where one must go in last. It's time to think about who is the right answer against whom. May I have a word? The person who uttered the words was Veyron. What? Ultima whooshed and exuded a creepy scent, so asked. As a matter of fact, I had a battle with the figure of Malcolm that could not be won or lost. If it were me now, I'd be guaranteed victory. Fighting against a beaten opponent couldn't be more normal. Just win and you're out, so handing it to him isn't bad. After so judging, Benimaru gave permission. Good. I'll leave you to it.
Okay.
Since that's what Mr. Benimaru said, we have no objection. Ultima's anger subsided, and Veyron's opponent was settled. Putting this series of conversations in perspective, the next person to open his mouth was Ajira. In that case, I have a request. Is it Ajira? What's the request? In fact, although I don't think it's a big deal yet, I have an opponent that I can't tell the difference between winning and losing. If I may, I'd like to use him as a rival. Who's that? A man named Kondo. He seems to be from the same school as the old master, and even if you consider him as a swordsman, you can't underestimate him. Really? Ajira was so karmic, Benimaru thought so. Ajira's genre makes one care a bit, and Hikaru has a hang-up on Ajira. Even with that heart of wish fulfillment, there are still problems. Are you confident of winning? That's right, if Ajira is going to lose, then there's no use talking about it. According to Benimaru, Lieutenant Kondo was a tricky man, after all, a figure that Rimuru had been guarded against could be grim for Ajira. Well, Ajira wanted to stop talking. In his opinion, it was an opponent who, as a swordsman, would have no regrets even if he lost the battle. It was, however, an act against Rimuru's intentions. Even Ajira herself could understand how capricious the demands she made were. A helping hand was extended to Ajira. All right, Ajira. It's rare for you to be as capricious as this. I'll help you out. This person is none other than Carrera. She, being the lord of Ajira, said so with a dignified attitude. So Benimaru nodded. For Carrera, Benimaru would have stopped asking if she could win. Kondo, even I can't say if I can win. I won't tell you not to lose, but you mustn't die. Upon hearing this, Carrera laughed aloud. That's natural. And, by the way, how about a dry test for Ajira? By the way, I think it's better to experiment with the weakest opponent. Miss Shion has already left, but it's pointless if you can't fight continuously after winning. Exactly. If that was indeed the case, it would have to be for someone with the qualifications to challenge Lord Veilgrind. That being said, Lord Veilgrind is a character with a lot of self-respect, and I don't think she would lie. This possibility Benimaru certainly took it into account. It had been the intention to wait until Shion returned before trying, and since Ajira and the others wanted to try it, there was no reason to stop them. What's the plan? Ajira as the starter and Esprit as a supporting counterpart. It's enough to figure out if killing the enemy in the door is really enough to take on the next challenge. Bring Zonda along with you. He's good at replying, so he can't use a strong man as an opponent. Zonda definitely didn't count as an underdog, but it was still a fact that having a saint-level figure as an opponent was still grim, so Ultima judged that there was no problem even if he couldn't continue the challenge. Not to mention, since it was not possible to travel to the dangerous battlefield, it would not be sufficient to treat those who came out of the door here. Because of this situation, no objections were raised. In that case, Ajira, Esprit, Zonda, you three, take this door down. The door that Benimaru gave instructions was the one that one of the four horsemen had entered. The giant man, who carried a gun on his back, referred to Benimaru as a maggot in a very condescending tone. As much as Benimaru wanted to burn him to charcoal with his own hands, he nevertheless ceded him to Ajira and the others. I'll take your orders. Leave it to me, please. I promise you, I will return victorious. The three then ran through the gate to battle. And just like that, the two-door onslaught began. The rest of the men didn't panic, waiting for orders on who Benimaru would attack where next. Decide on your opponent before they return from Ajira. The door, guarded by Veilgrind, was put in the back first. Kondo's opponent is Carrera and Malcolm's opponent is Veyron, and that's decided. There were two others left, Damrada and one of the four horsemen. In my opinion, the man who looks like the leader of the four horsemen is the strongest, so let me be his opponent. No objection. I had the same feeling. In that case, the guy named Damrada's opponent is us. How about this?
My opponent has already made up his mind, so I'm okay with that. With Damrada and the remaining four horsemen, there wasn't much of a difference in strength between them, so Benimaru was okay with that. Sue, is that okay?
Yes. The rest is the four horsemen with double swords. I think they're pretty good with me, no problem. Then, it's decided. After saying that, Benimaru fell into a temporary silence. Then, with a look of difficulty, he continued. Even though it's all come to this, it's really troubling. What's wrong? To Sue's question, Benimaru scratched his cheek and answered, I don't know what my opponent's name is because I don't have a registration number. Who guards which door is remembered, and it shouldn't be a problem. Indeed, a blind spot. It's all right, never mind. It's going to be a showdown anyway, and it would be good enough to know the name of the man who killed them. After listening to the conversation between Benimaru and Sue, everyone nodded with understanding. The name is important to the monsters, but the opponent is just an enemy, so there is no need to care so much, or so the monsters think. Ajira, Esperanza, and Zonda walked through the gates in a triumvirate of fighting spirit. In front of us was a place built like a coliseum, where a man was standing in a tight line. Unpleasant, just sending a bunch of soldiers. Since I'm the opponent, I'd say of course. After erecting the gun on his back with his right hand, the man let out a vile laugh. Before you die, tell you my name. I am Sequence 5, a member of the Four Horsemen who protect the Imperial Emperor, Lord Garcia. You demons, taste carefully the glory of fighting this master, and then disappear in this world. After shouting, Garcia danced the legendary grade gun that was infinitely close to the mythic level in his hand. The power of this gun was so great that even spiritual beings would fall to dust just by touching it. However, the Ajira crowd had a refreshing look on their faces. Your name doesn't interest me. What an idiot. How dare he call Benimaru a maggot? If I didn't know better, I'd be so ashamed I'd faint for 3 days. Don't talk about being scared, and even go as far as to say long and short things as you like. Garcia was enraged. It's just a bunch of soldiers. You're good at pissing people off. That I don't know what I'm talking about? Then I'll show you what I'm really made of. After shouting, he freed the suppressed force. Once he became a saint level, the amount of mana was enough to rival an awakened demon lord. Although Ajira and the rest have evolved, the gap is also several times. Entwined with a dense fighting aura all over his body, Garcia took a step forward. Just that alone, the marble floor paved inside the arena had cracked open. Be aware, and regret what you've done to me. Whether it angered him or not, the action Garcia would take was the same. Everyone sensed it, but none of them spoke up. Ajira put his hands on the knife hanging from his waist and adopted the tactic of carefully observing the attitude of his opponent. If you are hit by a shot, you will inevitably be seriously injured, so you will have to concentrate on defensive measures. Esprit, on the other hand, was using Ajira as a shield, preparing for successive attacks with magic. The more Garcia focuses on Ajira, the more Esprit will be able to prepare large spells. As long as it's safe to fight, it's good to have a comfortable, restful look. Zonda, on the other hand, has been carrying the support through to the end, not only being good at reparative magic, but also assisting Ajira in various key positions. I wanted to team up with Zonda more than I did with Esprit. Ajira was thinking about it. Garcia, on the other hand, was starting to laugh at the demon's tactics. With such a tactic, it was impossible for Garcia to get hurt, so Garcia uttered many words of contempt for the enemy in succession with an attitude that felt like he had won. Ha! Cowardice! This kind of talk about a demon sounds very powerful, but really, it cannot be an enemy of us. As the strongest knights of all, we have subdued demons like yourselves several times. To us, it's nothing more than the same existence as ants. He slammed his gun into the ground while talking big, and thanks to him the marble floor was smashed out in a big pit. Of course, neither Ajira nor Esprit carried out the evasion unharmed. Ajira would never impulse even if he were fooled. The battle is just a warm-up scene, and you can't forget that the best is yet to come. Esprit was more thorough, responding to the attack with caution and hiding behind Ajira, determined not to take damage. Esprit has a unique skill, the ability to observe. In fact, by using this skill, you can get in touch with each other even if you are separated by time or space. While there are restrictions on having to be an acquaintance, the only creature that needs to use this power is Carrera, so there is no problem for Esprit. Rather, if by chance she learned of this power, it was obvious that she would be taken forcibly to spy. For Esprit, who hates her job, only this is something that absolutely must be avoided. For this reason, Esprit simply circulated information to Carrera as usual while providing appropriate support. Incidentally, after finishing a certain amount of support, Zondo fled to a safe area to take refuge. He knew very well that he wasn't a combat-type character, and as a responder he had to be careful not to get hurt. That's how it felt, so Garcia thought that Ajira's party was just running around. It should be in fear of one's own power, there's nothing left to do. Ha! So that's it? You can't beat me if you just run around with your head up your ass. Garcia cracked his mouth while swinging his gun in succession. While his speech was both brash and garbled, there was no doubt that he was the real deal. The spiritual power that fills the tall body of even the saints is considered to be a class apart. As a matter of course, he also had the ultimate power of attorney granted by Emperor Rudra. This power is known as the Crusade for Supremacy and can transform the world to defeat the enemy into its own power. This power was also mounted on his gun, and thus transformed into an evil-busting holy gun that could purify all evil spirits or spiritual beings like demons. Not to mention Garcia's flesh, which is constantly reinforced in the course of his constant tirades against the enemy. What protected his body was a legendary grade armor, so he didn't have to worry at all about the repercussions of his power. Garcia had a deep understanding of his own power. To provoke the enemy in this way is in no way due to his carelessness. As Garcia himself had said, the Demon Noble was a legendary level super demon that could rival a demon lord. They are threats of the highest order and are by no means opponents who can be underestimated. Moreover, Ajira had a disinterested look at Garcia's provocation. Contempt for human existence was plentiful among the demon race, and if provoked they would immediately lash out. This creates a breach and thus a simple knockout, which is Garcia's rule of thumb. This time, however, the move didn't work. Because it was a little tricky, Garcia instead grew anxious. Calm down, human, the wording is too crude. As far as I'm concerned, I don't consider all humans to be inferior, but there are classes of souls. Remember, no matter what you do, you can't cover it up. Garcia, who was going to pretend to have a rude attitude, was outraged when he was judged to be nasty by his very nature. Instead of realizing it was Ajira's provocation, the disrupted pace revealed his nature. Ajira still didn't let his knife out of his sheath, just continued to parry Garcia's attacks with minimal movement, which further fueled Garcia's pride. Esprit, who was observing from close quarters, marveled at the height of Ajira's strength. This guy is obviously so good at close quarters combat, why bother being a demon? Isn't it stupid that magic doesn't work at all? So, caring about the battle while thinking about something that feels both like a compliment and a disparagement. Garcia was tempted by Ajira to cry out, "Shut up! Let me crush you all and offer your heads to the Emperor." Well, that's a lot of haste to say. I'm a rather sedate type, but you're also too impatient. Still, not as good as Lord Carrera. I'm sorry to hear that you're so impatient and simple-minded. These words of Ajira's no doubt also made their way through Esprit intact, into Carrera's ears. Esprit's personality was bad, not telling Ajira about this power of her own. This guy, he's gonna get yelled at afterwards, heh. I'm already having fun like this with nothing to do with myself. However, Garcia's next unconcerned statement caused his expression to gradually solidify. I'm anxious? What idiots you are. Can't see the strength gap yet? Is the owner of you guys the maiden with the lavender hair? Or, was it the blonde and arrogant one? That white-haired beauty is a celebrity, but in the end, she's just a frog in a well, Garcia said as he danced the gun around and followed up with an accurate stab at Ajira. Then, smugly as if boasting of victory, the explosive speech continued. Tell the ignorant that there are real monsters in the world. When you are clear about the strength of Lord Veilgrind, Lord Marshal's true form, you should be able to understand the meaning of my words. And Lieutenant Kondo is also a very intimidating character. Neither that group of ogre people, nor your group of masters, is a match for these few. After all, they're just a bunch of ants, and getting killed is what they deserve. It was only after hearing this that Esprit finally managed to stop passing the information to Carrera, as it took a bit of work to cut off the skill in a moment of anxiety. However, it was too late. Ha ha ha, just now, I heard some interesting things through Esprit. Carrera happily confided. But contrary to the tone, an atmosphere of saber rattling began to permeate. Huh, what's that? Ultima asked. From this atmosphere, she had sensed 7 or 8. The enemy in this door called you a brat. Chop, 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 and Ultima's forehead bulged with bruises. Veyron panicked. How nice it would have been if he'd rushed through the door himself. If he'd known it was going to happen, he regretted it. Sometimes ignorance is a blessing, and he had a deep understanding of it. Testa is said to be a frog at the bottom of the well. Thinking of me as a frog? Testarossa was speechless. Her beauty was praised from time to time, but there was never a memory of her being tainted. Being described as a frog is a first-time experience, so the unspeakable anger is raw. By the way, he called us ants. Because of the surprise, Benimaru's eyebrows picked upwards. What a joke, it was maggots before, but now it's ants? He mumbled to himself in a not-so-funny tone. At first glance it seemed calm, but Benimaru was already thinking that he should take care of things like this himself. The only one who is truly calm is Sue. Even in the other world created by Lord Vielgrind, the ability to maintain communication is an interesting one. One side clasped its arms in silence, and one side was already fixated on Esprit's skills. It was here that the exposure of her skill was shown to Sue, and so Esprit later received numerous commissions from Sue afterwards, but that's another story. Carrera continued with her report. They said we couldn't beat Lord Vielgrind and that guy named Kondo, but they made a fool of us and killed us. The reason for the calm narrative is that she has worked hard at dealing with her feelings alone. Carrera loves to incite people and hates being incited by people. You don't know if you win or lose until you try it yourself. Testarossa said these words with an expressionless face. In fact, it was true that she hadn't beaten Vielgrind, but Testarossa wasn't hard of heart to speak so. Those bright red eyes are like words of praise. Then again, Carrera. Although I didn't get it, why refer to me as a cricket? That guy, he's super awesome. Ha, how can that be? And even if it were true, I would never forgive him. To Ultima's questioning, Carrera smiled and gave a negative. But there was no smile in her eyes at all. Instead, there is a dangerous sheen, which is now as if it is about to explode. No need to be merciful to that guy. It's nature, you're a human being, you can't say that. Ultima was enraged. For her part, Carrera was in agreement while holding back the desire to mess around. What a pity. I would have made him understand from beginning to end how much he was worth. Tell Ajira not to be lenient, and we'll talk about the pardon later. For sure. We must take our share of the blame for the insult. There was no one on the scene who could stop their conversation. Ultima was naive and cruel. Testarossa's sneer could send terror through the minds of those who saw it. And Carrera is optimistic about spreading destruction and nothingness. There is not the slightest hint of compassion. Never giving comfort to the enemy. For them, giving a simple death is mercy, and dying without pain is forgiveness. Despite all the killing, it made a difference in their eyes. Veyron listened to the conversation of the group of lords and cursed the man who was Ajira and the other's enemy. His superiors, the demon primordials, are a presence that must not be angered. But the guy was talking as if he had a hard-on. Veyron held his head tightly in his mind. Stupid human, ah. The cost of this folly, hopefully, will be borne by you. He had to pray so. The horror of Ultima is clear to Veyron. And on top of that, Carrera and Testarossa, with whom she is hostile, have horrors that cannot be exhausted without pen and ink. The direction in which the angry spearhead is pointing may even change the fate of the world. At the very least, please rule out this foolish man quickly. The anger of several adults must be appeased. Please, Ajira. I can only rely on you. As a great demon, Veyron could only lament his inability to do anything here, while pinning his hopes on Ajira, who was a level lower. What the demons were thinking had nothing to do with Benimaru, who continued to give orders anyway. Carrera, can word from our side reach the inside? Well, I haven't tried, so I guess I could. In that case, send a message to them that they can't keep saying unpleasant things. Carrera nodded. Thinking that it would have been better to do so earlier, she intervened forcibly in Esprit's call letter path. Esprit, can you hear me? Hey, Carrera-sama. You owe me one for this statement. More than this. Carrera giggled out of the corner of her eye. Then came the resentful order. Cut that man to pieces, and beat him to death, and so convey it to Ajira. Carrera's voice resounded in Esprit's mind. That's what Benimaru-sama is asking too, get it straight and don't fail. It's over, my abilities are exposed in front of the subordinates, Esprit sighed. By the way, the communication was still in a state of forced intervention by Carrera, and there was nothing to be done about that. She had given up, and the boss's unreasonableness was not something that had just started today. It's not a matter of course, Esprit said to Ajira, thinking so. Hey Ajira. Lord Carrera and the others are pretty angry, aren't they? If we don't get rid of him now, we're in for a bad time. Why would Lord Carrera know about this side? Though there are questions about that, you just give up. I should be more aware than this, and since we masters have been insulted, we must pay the appropriate retribution. Che, you guys, you're pretty pissed off, too. Noting that the normally steady Ajira was also indignant, Esprit sighed. There is no stopping it now, so let's say it's a good opportunity. If Ajira shows his true talent and observes it well, it is the right answer. However, Garcia, who ignored the atmosphere of the scene, cried out. You guys, weak as shit, give up and die. Don't worry, your masters will be cleaned up sooner or later, and you'll certainly be able to serve them like this under the 9 springs. This passage from Garcia, naturally, was also passed on to Carrera through Esprit. This time, however, Carrera is not the only one who learns about it, and it seems that the whole team is sharing it through thought communication. This bastard is full of shit. What the hell is Ajira doing? Didn't you tell him to kill the bastard? Are you underestimating me? Hey, don't embarrass me. It's a lucky thing that Shion isn't here. If that guy was here, our plans would be in ruins. That's true. Hey, if it doesn't work, I'll do it for you. Hurry up. It's all said and done. Indeed, if Shion was still around, it would surely ignore Ajira's demands. But even then, Esprit wouldn't be forgiving, it would just hurt the dignity of being a demon. That said, people's opinions of themselves are declining. Aha, that's too bad. These words are what Esprit really meant. Although Garcia's rude words and actions looked like a handyman, his strength was real and unexpectedly a tricky opponent. However, it has come to this, and it has to come to fruition. Without taking down Garcia soon, the subordinates' anger would undoubtedly ripple through to several of them. Ajira still shows no signs of striking out, just concentrating on avoiding it. Ajira won't lose as long as they don't suffer a fatal injury, but there's no point in not winning. Then it becomes necessary for Esprit to use magic to figure things out, but that's in less realistic terms. After various previous attempts, it had been determined that Garcia had a high level of patience for magic. What's wrong? What's wrong? Only to run away. Garcia is very aggressive. Even so, Ajira still doesn't look like he's going to fight back. Hey, Ajira. It's really not good. If we don't hurry, Lord Carrera will be so angry. Even the demons that followed them were afraid of war under the domineering authority of the master who had become serious. If the anger was directed at themselves, what else could it be but terror? The normally elusive Esprit was now really anxious too, but Ajira remained silent. Incidentally, Zonda stayed quite far away and began to prepare tea, as if intending to entertain the subordinates when he went out, which in Esprit's opinion was simply nonsense. Hey, Zonda. What are you guys doing when I'm not looking? Just take a look and you'll see. Master Ajira is not injured. He's really free. Don't be ridiculous, asshole. Why am I the only one who has to be pressured by your lordships? Esprit shouted against it. Zonda replied with a smile on his face. Well, who cares? Slaughter this guy. Esprit gritted her teeth in remorse. Zonda was only a viscount, yet he was not at all afraid of the Earl-level Esprit. Well, after all, he's serving Lord Ultima, and I'm afraid he couldn't have handled it without this nerve. Thinking about it, Esprit didn't think any further. Since the Zonda faction isn't going to be of any use, we'll just have to let Ajira cheer properly. Ajira was no doubt very angry. He must have had a reason for not attacking, and if it was in search of an opportunity, then one can only hope for that. At this point, however, Ajira said something very unpleasant. I'll tell you one thing, Esprit, that I understand. What is it? It seems that the power of old age alone is not enough to defeat this man. Huh? You can't be serious. Esprit thought so. The fact that she couldn't win, how could she say such a thing to her boss? Even though she usually joked about it, there was nothing she could do if she really got angry. What's more, she was now watching the battle. Before the anger of the superiors burns, one must ask what Ajira's true intentions are. What's going on? It's nothing, it's just a simple thing. This man wrapped aura around his entire body, and not only his attacking power, but also his defensive power was greatly increased. So I have learned one thing: no matter how many times I hit him with my sword, I can't cut him. Combining the effect of the Crusade to Overlord, one of the powers of the power of substitute, with the defensive power of the legendary armor, Garcia's defense had reached a level comparable to that of the mythical level, and Ajira, who had seen through this, realized that his sword could not do effective damage. Is that why my magic didn't work, too? Exactly. It's no big deal what he's doing, but it's nothing if he can't get hurt. To Ajira's pertinent opinion, too, Esprit could only frown and nod in agreement. If they couldn't win, they would have to report to Guerrera truthfully, but then the few of them would be disgraced. Even without being enlightened by Ajira, Esprit understood the fact that he was not very skilled in practical combat by observing Garcia. Originally, Esprit's abilities were not as powerful as the dreaded power, but if they were the dragon race, they could break the dreaded power by simply attacking. That's because, as spiritual beings, they possess the most powerful power of will. As for the Esprit line, although they were demon nobles and advanced spiritual beings, their strength of will was still not comparable to ultimate skills. Without a solution to this reality, even if skill prevails, there is no way to win. Ha 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 ha. I guess you finally understood the difference in strength, so you're giving up. Garcia laughed aloud. While the fact that the gun didn't hit was infuriating, even so it didn't matter that he was so considered. It was Garcia's job, after all, to slow the enemy down here. By the time the enemy was exhausted, victory was within reach. Even if it didn't wait until then, the companions guarding the other gates would rush to support them after they had cleaned up the enemy. That's why Garcia was able to enjoy the fight without panicking. Looking at Garcia like this, Esprit smacked her lips. Next, inquire of Ajira in a serious tone. You're still going to challenge that Kondo guy even though you know about it, right? Isn't it because there are strategies that can win? Hearing this, Ajira smiled up. Naturally, there is. Your assistance is indispensable in the secret scheme of the ages. Having said that, Esprit has not turned down that option. You tell me. In fact, including prompting Esprit to utter such an answer was Ajira's ploy. The spirited Esprit actually has a cheerful side, too, and Ajira would never have said yes if it had been normal to ask her. The demoness loves spring and loves to see the expressions of her companions crying in trouble, and Ajira, who knows this well, chooses to drive spring into desperate straits. That being said, If you offend Lord Carrera, I may have to be purged as well. Ajira rejoiced at having won the big bet. Pass on that secret plan before Esprit changes her mood. Turning the power of will into a blade to crush the enemy is the only way. I'm afraid Ajira is not coming to Garcia anyway. The man who had intended to aim for the gap in the armor was blocked by aura which covered his entire body. Sublimation to mythical defenses is not illusory and can completely protect the owner. Ajira was able to overtake Garcia easily if only by the looks of his hands, but Ajira still couldn't deliver an effective attack on Garcia. That being the case, Ajira would have to rise to that level as well. Listen to the sound of the sword and become one with it. If you understand this essence and reach the top of your game. Concentrating his whole body, Ajira gripped his innate sword and listened to the sound of it, so, he came to a conclusion. It seems our will alone cannot penetrate that man's armor. Esprit, trust this old man. Your talent is not as good as that of Carrera Summer, but you have the skills of an expert. Although you don't like swords, the base is very good, which is why I believe enough to entrust it to you. What are you talking about? Put your hand on my back and I'll leave it to you. Unable to understand Ajira's meaning, Esprit was momentarily overwhelmed, but Esprit chose to trust Ajira anyway. Ajira stood straight. Esprit obeyed Ajira's instructions and put her hand on Ajira's back. Garcia called out in a magnificent voice as if mocking the demons. Have you finally given up? Well, I'll let you off now. Your owner, Rimuru the Demon Lord, should almost be killed by Lord Vielgrind, too. As an inferior demonic creature of the last resort, I should be satisfied to be able to lead your master to the Yellow Springs Road. This statement is in no way permissible. How dare you despise our ruler, Lord Rimuru? And you say it's almost time to be killed? The words, conveyed through Esprit, made the subordinates' auras change. Only, Ajira and Esprit had pushed the limits of endurance first. All right, you guys. I can hold back and give praise when I'm insulted, but if I continue to be rational now, stop being evil. I'll kill that guy right now. There was no need to wait for Carrera's order, the two had meant it. Esprit, try to master my power. I don't know what's going on, but leave it to me, I'm going to cut that bastard to pieces. The two attacked in anger. Ajira pulls consciousness to its limits to communicate with the sword, thus awakening a power. Let me answer your wish. Sharpening the heart, sharpening the body. He seemed to hear such a beautiful sound, but does not yet know its truth. Only, that power did belong to Ajira. I am a blade, the immortal blade that destroys the enemy. As Ajira shouted, a gold-colored knife appeared in Esprit's hand. It gave the blade change, the power that Ajira had acquired. The effect, plain and simple, is that Ajira's body transforms into a blade and attaches the skills he has mastered to the holder of the blade. But if the owner is already strong, the effect will be immeasurable. Esprit drew her knife in a natural, fluid motion. The blade drawn from its golden sheath glowed with a platinum glow, the 8 petals scattered by the residual image as it exited. The name of this move is Yawa Shining, the highest mystic of the Myzushin life stream. Are you dead, you piece of shit? Garcia didn't see it, nor could he understand it. Just now, what happened? The prey, which was only defensively strong, suddenly flashed and disappeared. Garcia saw Ajira suddenly turn into a knife, but had no time to think why, as he had been decapitated before this. Garcia is very confident in his defense. Because in the face of an ultimate skill, all attacks would be nullified. In order to crack this ability, one must have an ultimate skill like Garcia, and the demons in the current battle didn't make him feel that kind of power, so he was relieved to take the time to push them into a corner. But the reality of the situation changed in an instant. Garcia's armor was split as if it were a thin sheet of paper, and his flesh was chopped to pieces. In a flash, he was killed without time to think. No, there's still time left for thinking. Esprit has a physical soul in her hand, which has the appearance of a small carnelian. Well, this guy's red. It suits him. He just doesn't know what's going on. Esprit let out a mutter, and Ajira, who had turned back into her human form, stared at it with disgust in a spiteful tone. Bastard, where in the sky is there a martial artist who can remain silent when his master is insulted? Alas, it was my task to admonish you, but I didn't expect you to become emotional because of the words of such a small person. Esprit's rare appeasement lifted Ajira. Forget it, this is an insult to Lord Rimuru, I can't help it, even Lord Carrera allowed it. You don't mind? Well, let's just say that's the way it is. In so responding, Ajira vowed in her heart to be more refined. Esprit looked slightly enviously at the lookalike Ajira. Just now, indeed, Ajira has acquired new abilities. He thought back. I am the one who practiced for the sake of understanding the ultimate meaning of the sword. Although not all the memories were restored, the sword's extreme will, which was once the ultimate pursuit, was once again boarded into Ajira's heart. No, it should be said that Ajira completely recreates the sword skills of the time. Everything contained in this supreme sword technique of exorcism, the Mizushin life stream. Ajira, who was once human, believed his soul boarded in the sword. Maybe that's why? The former memories were awakened by the transformation of itself into a blade. That's when Ajira understood, for the first time, why she was in a samurai costume. For in the distant past, before this world was reincarnated as a demon, he was a samurai. Akari Byakuya used to be the name of this old man. Well, now that a dead human has suddenly appeared, it only confuses everyone. Hakuru's figure flashed through his mind. His disciples were well trained and inherited this new school called Mizuru. Ajira felt that the word heart destiny did not fit with magic, and changed the name, and the memory came to mind. Kukaku, getting named by Lord Rimuru, isn't that even the heart's fate understood? That being the case, there's no chance for me to appear. In this world, he became a family with the great ogre tribe and had a daughter, and when the daughter grew up, she gave birth to a child named Hakuru. And in this day and age, there are many people whom Hakuru cultivated and grew up. The most important of these existences is the Lord of Ajira, Rimuru, and the credit for teaching Rimuru belongs, of course, to Hakuru. A skill painstakingly researched has been inherited, a matter that makes Ajira sincerely happy, except that it would be uninteresting to come out now and steal the limelight. Ajira thought of this and switched his thoughts for a moment. He lost interest in the garbage that had just been killed. He turned around and headed to where the lord he now served, Carrera, is. The three demons that emerged from inside the door were greeted warmly by the subordinates. Well done, I've got a light on my face, too. Carrera slapped Ajira on the back. Ajira became as if she was going to die as a result, and that counted for something cute about her. Gentlemen, I have prepared some simple meals. Zonda roundly and thoughtfully prepared the table and chairs, made the black tea and put sandwiches on it. This was supposed to be Zonda's job, but the timing was still well received. The introspection session followed, and Esprit handed the carnelian first to Carrera. This is the soul of that rude man, and his heart nucleus is sealed in it, and there is still self-awareness. Well done, Esprit. This will allow punishment to the guy who insulted Lord Rimuru. Aha. So, Carrera, can we do this? Carrera tossed the carnelian to Ultima, who had interjected.
If it's okay with Benimaru-san, it's okay with me.
After saying that, he waited for Benimaru's decision. As you wish. There's no need to ask. Benimaru was not interested in tossing the dead man. In fact, there was nothing he could do about the spirit, but leave it to the demons. Originally, tossing the opponent who had already won was a violation of his principles, but this time Gashia's statement was intolerable, and Benimaru was really in no mood to stop it. And just like that, the red jade fell into the hands of Ultima. Well, let's do it. Curse and destroy sin. This is the fierce poison refined by Ultima. It wasn't something of a physical nature, it was something horrible that even spirit bodies could destroy and astral phantoms could infest. The spirit solidified, the red jade couldn't stand it, and Garcia cried out in pain. Stop it, stop it. However, Ultima just smiled happily. Well. By the way, what is that effect? Testarossa asked. Not that she wasn't aware of it, but for Garcia to hear. This, will continue to give pain until the power that wraps around the soul is gone. This guy has a lot of energy and probably can enjoy it for a long time, huh? It'll be 1,000 years or so, and then it'll be a pure white and beautiful soul. Ultima replied cheerfully. Garcia could only choke breathlessly. Exactly where did he choose wrong, to the point where he was starting to regret it? Yeah, that's a very good thing. This person has also been given the opportunity to redeem himself and will surely thank us. Testarossa said with a smile. How can that be? Thought Benimaru, but this time he wouldn't help out and acquiesced. Under Zonda's service, everyone took a short break. Esprit couldn't help but wonder if there was any time for that now, but spoke up for a spot. Honestly, I didn't know what to do when Ajira said she couldn't win. It was precisely because the atmosphere was now mild that she wanted to vent. Though she had anticipated Ajira's ploy, being used perfectly like this kept the matter in her mind. I didn't think it was impossible to win. Ajira said back. In fact, he wasn't sure that he could succeed in the battle, but if he did now, it would be a shame if he failed to change his blade. But, at least discuss it beforehand.
It's okay to win, but if you lose, you can't be held responsible.
Always hiding in the safety circle, Esprit had really spelled it out for a long time this time, which made her anger towards Ajira even greater. Ultima smiled and nodded in response. Yeah, well, if you lose, it's not allowed. It should be said, we won't allow it. I don't think you'll be angry even if you lose, but you can't die in battle. Exactly. That's what I thought, that's why it was monitored through Esprit. It looked like Carrera was the laissez-faire type, but if they were about to lose, she was going to be the first to rush in. From that point of view, what would follow would be the official start of the subordinates' offensive, a move that might be considered too much for some, but still necessary just in case. Speaking of which, Esprit wondered if she felt uneasy and muttered in a small voice. So, is Shion Summer all right? Our battles are over, but she's not out yet.
Esprit had thought it should be okay, but suddenly became worried.
Benimaru replied with a bland face. No problem. She might forget her purpose, but she doesn't feel like fighting hard. Sue agreed. You're forgetting me. If repeating the same attack doesn't work, you should think of something else to attack. The tone sounded as if it had been seen on the spot, and Esprit was a little taken aback. That's when Testarossa interjected. Isn't that right? I'll stay outside to prepare for any unexpected situation that may arise. Hearing that, both Carrera and Ultima spurted out tea. Huh? Wait, Testarossa. So, what does that mean? Even if Esprit doesn't pass on the information, you'll still have a handle on what's going on inside? Of course, Testarossa finished and smiled deeply at the duo. At this point, Carrera called out as if she suddenly sensed something. Are you also watching Lord Raimuru's battle? At the thought of that possibility, Ultima jumped too. That's cunning, Testarossa. Really, this is bad. So is Diablo. Why are we all just enjoying ourselves? Shouldn't we be invited to watch it together at this time? Carrera and Ultima were indignant, but Testarossa had a refreshing face. Benimaru and Sue were the same, and as people who were tasked with intelligence gathering, they both felt that this was a battle that should never be missed. By the way, Shion was completely unaware of this and was the first to rush through the door. If they had let Shion see Raimuru's fight, she would certainly not have moved until it was over, and it was because he knew that Benimaru had kept it a secret from Shion. In short, it was now necessary to placate the disgruntled demoness trio. Benimaru helplessly began to illustrate. As mentioned above, it is very convenient that Moss is in charge of surveillance, and has entered every door in order to see what is going on everywhere. It worked without a hitch, Benimaru concluded. That is, Moss is also still gathering intelligence right now. In order to keep the enemy inside unnoticed, Benimaru ordered nothing to be done and resolutely not to move. That's right. I've tried, but I can't touch the other doors, so I think I've defeated the enemy for Ajira. Of course, I can't get in there either. Zonda, who had done nothing, didn't mention it first, and even Esprit didn't have the right to continue the challenge. While it's not clear how Vielgrind made her judgment, in short, those who went into challenge, as long as they didn't directly defeat the enemy, had no way to enter the other doors. As expected. Yeah. Looks like it was the right thing to do in the first place. Benimaru, Sue, and Testarossa nodded at each other in greeting. So, if one of us is in a bitter fight, Testarossa goes to support? Yes, it is. Actually, I don't think that's going to happen, and I have other things on my mind, but I'll be there if anything happens. No need, as much as I'd like to say it, it's Lord Raimaru's order after all. You have to make sure you win. Don't be so brave. Carrera said undauntedly, and the Benimaru nodded their heads in agreement. The next moment, Benimaru turned a pale face and admonished Carrera. Carrera, your opponent must not be careless. That's natural, but why do you say that? Only this guy Kondo sensed Moss, and one shot took him out. Hey, that's not so funny. Carrera smiled fearlessly, seemingly more intrigued than she was by fear of her opponent's might. I don't think you need to worry about it, but if something happens, call for help through Esprit. Testarossa said so, and Carrera held up one hand in response. Her attitude made it clear that it wasn't needed, a rather Carrera-esque move that brought a smile to Testarossa's face. So, the subordinates continued to start attacking the various doors. Inside one of the doors, Xion was already fighting, so there were still 6 doors left. The 5 remaining doors were opened in unison, except for the one guarded by Vielgrind. Xion is fighting alone. There was peace outside the door, but now Xion was confronting the enemy fiercely. The opponent is Minaza, 6th in single digits, one of the 4 knights, and a female knight. With a violent gasp, Xion stared indignantly at Minaza. I can't believe you pushed me to this point. I'll give you a compliment. She gathered her strength and shouted loudly. This Minaza, too, cannot be said to be unharmed. The uniform was torn and the skin was exposed, but it was colorless. And rightfully so. Because Minaza has long since stopped mimicry and gone back to her original form so she can use it to the fullest. Shut up. I am the one who praises you, that pointless effort. It is the children who can beat me who deserve the praise, and I shall have to repay that hatred. At Minaza's feet were scattered countless corpses of worm-type demonic beasts, all of which had been slaughtered by Xion. Yes, the higher being of the worm-type demon, Insectors, a worm-type demon, that was the true face of Minaza. Ha! This level of assorted fish is nothing to me. We have a training ground that produces more powerful individuals in large numbers, so we're used to it. What did you say? Humph, that's a shame. Don't look at me like that, I'm also an experienced woman. That is, fighting worm-type demons, it's not my first time. Although Xion had accumulated some fatigue, she still had quite a bit of strength left, and she said so in a condescending tone. Then, as if remembering something, continued to ramble on. She also said it was in full form, I think. Hearing this, Minaza's face changed. Raziel? Are you trying to say that it's you, the one who defeated the Western patron saint? Xion grunted and nodded. It's not a fight, but it was my fight. It was a tough one. Hearing this, Minaza muttered, really? Then dropping her head, she let out a laugh. Yeah, you got that guy done. That guy betrayed us. We are an invading race from the otherworld, and thanks to His Majesty Rudra accepting us, we have a good place to settle down. And yet, without showing us any respect, he continued to be a hopeless fool. Even though Minaza was giving instructions, Xion still didn't understand anything. She just showed a look of "what is this guy talking about?" and looked at Minaza. Only, there was something that Xion cared about, so she took the opportunity to ask. "I'll ask you one thing, have you sent any of your compatriots around the world besides Raziel?" Xion cared about Zijin and Apito, who were companions. If they were acquaintances, it might not be good to kill Minaza. With that in mind, just in case, she'd ask first. There are many races in the other world. Various invading races will attempt to invade the world through the occasionally opened gates of the underworld, such as us, the worm-type demon, insectaire races, the phantom beast race, the demon race, etc. Unlike the demon race, we are semi-spiritual beings, and in this world, it only takes time to become figurative. Even if Minaza didn't answer, Xion didn't care, but Minaza politely responded anyway. The gates of the underworld, in Minaza's words, are the gates of hell in Diablo's words, but Xion didn't expect so much. According to Minaza, there are 3 major races in the underworld vying for supremacy. And there is a parallel world where the demon race seems to be in hell. The underworld is a world of extreme poverty and nothing to feed it, which is why they are staring at it with a tiger's eye. In the distant past, they had sent their compatriots here many times with the intention of expanding their territory, and worm-like magical beasts like the legion bees were also one of the invading races. There are, however, some disobedient races that are a little troubled by this. The representative of this crowd is the Raziel that Xion defeated. This showed that Minaza wasn't ironclad within their race, but Xion was thinking of something else at the moment. Apito and Zijin were adopted by Rimuru while running from someone. It can be concluded without question that it's the enemy. Although there wasn't much evidence, but Xion still judged it that way, she just trusted her intuition, and at a time like this, Xion's intuition wasn't missing, she was kinda smug. This time, Xion's intuition was also accurate. Not by accident. Xion had once come back from the dead, and thus forged a deep connection with Rimuru, the skill of seal. Thus Seal's arithmetic ability had an effect on Xion, who had correctly found the truth through fragmented intelligence. "That means you're the enemy, right?" "Ha ha ha ha, what are you saying now? Thanks to you buying time with me, I managed to bring my lovely children back to life again." Minaza shouted, her lower body beginning to swell. Hidden unseen beneath the skirt of the military uniform, in fact Minaza's lower body was open with several mouths, from which the ominous egg was born. "Ha ha 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 ha. Look at you holding on strong, long since exhausted from fighting my children. You think you can still beat that amount, wah?" The smug Minaza suddenly stopped talking. That's for sure. With just one sweep of the blade, many of the worm-type demons were swept away and fell. "No, that's not possible. My children, with the support of His Majesty Rudra, should have shed their bodies to become warriors with overwhelmingly powerful power." The power of Minaza is similar to that of Apito's queen worship. Its unique skill called gluttony rebirth can regenerate children countless times by devouring their bodies. Moreover, the time required for the reincarnation is greatly reduced by the strengthening of the power of substitution that Rudra lent him. The many insect-type demons that were born were indeed strong enemies to the Xion, and Minaza was proud of it. One by one, their strength was comparable to that of the upper-level demons, and they were even interspersed with fierce fighters that could rival the demon lord race. However, Xion had fought a hard battle before, but they had all been defeated. That being the case, there will be no second time. In fact, by using the essence of the unique skill of the chef, optimal action, the worm-type demons were defeated in an instant. Minaza was greatly shocked. Even if Minaza doesn't do it herself, just driving the kids can wear down the opponent. It was a tactic she was most content to excel at, and encountering an oversized presence like Xion had thrown her into turmoil. But she was still queen after all. No longer repeating the mistake, stood up with a face full of anger. "Unforgivable. My children, lend your strength to the mother of the queen in her position. Funny, I accept your challenge. Minaza took the power of the children into his own hands and went into battle form. And Shion was happy to meet it with the true Gorokimaru. And so, the long battle began. The one-in-one offensive and defensive play continues. Minaza's attack had caused damage to Shion, but the damage was instantly healed by the unleashing of overdrive regeneration, and Shion's attack couldn't hurt Minaza's exoskeleton. The exoskeleton, which absorbed the legendary grade defense and was guarded by an extreme, had reached a level where even the mythical grade could not inflict damage. Minaza's agility overrode Shion, but Shion was superior in strength. Defense is better with Minaza, and recovery is better with Shion. Damn it, this again. The worm type is so hard it's a pain in the ass. As long as it could cause even the slightest damage to Minaza's exoskeleton, there was always a way for Shion to use the chef next. Minaza also desperately resisted. Never let Shion do it. She did not despise Shion.